I'm going to speak in English, so I apologise for that in advance. My Bahasa Indonesia isn't quite good enough to do the presentation fully in Bahasa, but we will have the slides shown in Bahasa Indonesian, and of course you can ask questions as we go in whatever language you'd prefer. I think it's worthwhile as a starting point to summarise the assets that we now have, because it has been a year of very significant change for the business. So as the same as last year, we have the Tujuh Bukit Gold Project, which is 100% owned and produced this year is expected to produce 120 to 140,000 ounces of gold. We also have the Merdeka Copper operation, again 100% owned, expected to produce 16 to 20,000 tonnes of copper this year. And we have two key development projects, the Tujuh Bukit Copper Project, for which we have just released a pre-feasibility study on, a very significant undeveloped resource that is fast moving towards production, we believe, over the coming years. And lastly, the Pani Gold Project, which is a very significant gold resource that we're currently completing a feasibility study on. Importantly, over the past 12 months, we've also added Merdeka battery materials, and that includes some key assets, being the very large undeveloped nickel resource, 13.8 million tonnes of contained nickel. And in addition to this very large resource, we've also got processing activities, including RKEFs, which produce nickel pig iron, and we are expecting to develop high-pressure acid leach plants in the future, which will supply the battery supply chain. And in addition, over the course of the past 12 months, we've been progressing our acid, iron and metals project, and we expect first production to be in the second half of 2023. Next slide, please. Okay, we now have an operational summary of our overall performance from our existing production assets, and this slide compares 2021 with 2022. You can see we have very consistent production during the last 2 years. 2022 at Tujuh Bukit produced 125,000 ounces of gold at $1,131 per ounce, all in sustaining costs, and very close to the prior year. So very consistent production. And in the first quarter of 2021, we were down a little bit, but we expect full year production to be 120 to 140,000 ounces of gold at an all-in sustaining cost of $1,100 to $1,300 per ounce. The Merdeka project has been very consistent for the last 2 years, producing 19,000 tonnes of copper in 2021, and last year nearly 20,000 at 19,552. Again, the production is down a little bit in the first quarter, but we expect our full year production to be in the range of 16 to 20,000 tonnes of copper production. Importantly, we saw the first contribution from our nickel assets during the course of 2022. So effectively from the middle of May 2022, we had production coming from those assets, and we produced 38,800 tonnes of nickel pig iron during 2022 for the full year at an all-in sustaining cost of $13,800 per tonne. And in the first quarter, we produced 9,400 tonnes and expected to produce 36,000 to 40,000 tonnes of nickel pig iron for the full year. Can we go to the next slide, please? Okay, so this slide shows our overall financial performance for the last 2 years. You can see that revenue increased significantly, and that really is attributable to contribution from the RKEFs that produce nickel pig iron. So that was $422 million US dollars contribution during the course of 2022. And that then flowed through to operational profit and also EBITDA and net profit after tax. Overall, gold and copper prices, gold was up a little bit, copper down a little bit, and we've started 2023 with some strong gold prices. Copper started strong but is off a little bit, but we're in two very good metals in terms of their potential for good metal prices over the course of the coming years. You can see nickel pig iron increased significantly from 2020 to 2022 and averaged $16,324 US dollars per tonne in terms of our sales price last year. Next slide, please. Okay, so this slide looks at our overall financial position of Merdeka Copper Gold and also the nickel businesses that were acquired during the course of 2022. You can see that our overall EBITDA levels increased during 2022, but what I would say is that there was a significant investment in new production during the course of 2022. So we borrowed money in terms of investing in additional NPI capacity for ZHN, and we also borrowed additional money to develop the AIM project. So that resulted in higher overall debt levels when you compare 2021 to 2022, and we don't expect to see the EBITDA contribution from those assets until the second half of 2023 in the case of ZHN RKEF, which is a 50,000 tonne per annum NPI smelter. And in the case of AIM, we'll start to see a stronger contribution to EBITDA in the first quarter of 2024. We also have invested quite a bit of money during 2022 in the development of a haul road from our SCM mine to IMIP to allow us to haul ore and sell ore during the second half of 2023. So those three investments increased debt during 2022, but we're expected to see an increase in EBITDA as a result of those investments in the second half of 2023 and going into 2024. We maintained very healthy cash balances throughout the course of 2022, and with the issuance of the IPO for Merdeka Battery Materials in the second quarter of 2023, our cash position has improved further. Next slide, please.
I'll take everything from Pak David.
Okay.
Sedikit gambaran mengenai proyek Lembaga 7 Bukit. Proyek ini terletak di bawah tambang emas 7 Bukit yang saat ini tidak beroperasi, dan tambang ini merupakan salah satu proyek lembaga yang belum beroperasi terbesar di dunia. Merdeka baru-baru ini merilis PFS, Feasibility Study, yang menunjukkan kelayakan teknis dan ekonomi dari tambang tersebut. Tambang tersebut secara garis besar memiliki total sumber daya mineral sebesar 1,7 miliar ton dengan grade 0,47% tembaga dan 0,5 gram per ton emas. Dan juga di dalam PFS tersebut kami juga mengeluarkan maiden ore reserves atau cadangan pertama sebesar 289 juta ton dengan grade 0,56% tembaga dan 0,65 gram per ton emas. Proyek ini memiliki usia tambang lebih dari 30 tahun dan produksi kumulatif lebih dari 1,5 8 juta ton tembaga dan 4,1 juta ounce emas. Ekspansi tambang ini akan dilakukan secara bertahap dari 4 juta ton biji per tahun di awal produksi menjadi 24 juta ton biji per tahun di peak productions. Di mana di peak productions tambang ini akan memproduksi at least 112.000 ton per tahun tembaga dan 366.000 ounce emas. Proyek ini akan memakan investasi modal produksi sebesar 757 juta US dollar. Next. Proyek dari PFS yang sudah kita rilis, kita hanya mencakup sekitar 24% dari sumber daya mineral, sehingga upside dari proyek ini masih besar dengan kegiatan continuous exploration yang akan dilakukan di beberapa tahun ke depan, sehingga PFS yang kita rilis hanya subset dari total sumber daya yang ada di proyek tersebut. Next. Nah, proyek lain yang sebagai company kita sangat fokus adalah proyek emas tani. Tani merupakan sumber daya yang belum dikembangkan, tetapi memiliki cadangan yang sangat signifikan dengan total sumber daya terindikasi sebesar 5,5 juta ounce emas dan total sumber daya mineral sebesar 6,6 juta ounce emas. Proyek ini akan menjadi proyek open pit yang berumur panjang dan berbiaya rendah, dan akan menghasilkan produksi lebih dari 450.000 ounce emas per tahun saat mencapai peak production. Saat ini perusahaan sedang melakukan pekerjaan feasibility study atau studi kelayakan yang kami harapkan akan selesai di kuartal 3 2023 dan akan kita announce di kuartal 4 2023. Sehingga hal ini akan allow the company untuk melakukan kegiatan konstruksi di awal tahun 2024. Sehingga kita dapat memulai first productions di akhir 2025. Next. David, you want to take over MDM?
Thanks, Albert. MBM was listed in May 2023. It's really assembled over the course of the past 12 months. The MBM group has assembled an amazing group of assets. We've got the largest undeveloped nickel mine in the world, and 77% of the total overall nickel resource that we have is limonite ore, which is the key ore that you need to be able to develop high-pressure acid leach plants. That is our medium-term objective. So over the course of the next 5 years, we're expecting to develop up to 240,000 tonnes of nickel MHP during that period with various joint venture partners, and that will transfer Merdeka into a very significant player in the EV supply chain in terms of the production of MHP. We also have the existing RKEFs. Initially, we acquired stakes in 2 producing RKEFs in CSI and BSI, and more recently, in the second half of last year, we agreed to participate in the construction of another RKEF, which we refer to as ZHN. So between these 3 production assets, we have a total production of 88,000 tonnes of nickel pig iron. Just recently, we purchased a nickel pig iron converter, and this particular asset converts nickel pig iron and turns it into high-grade nickel matte, which is also a product that can go into the EV supply chain for the production of batteries. Our Project AIM has been ongoing over the course of the past 18 months and is getting very close to delivering its first acid at the end of Q3, beginning of Q4 this year. And then we expect it to ramp up to full production over the course of Q1 and Q2 last quarter of 2023, first quarter of 2024. And lastly, we've got the IKIP development, which is going to be an industrial park, which is developed in the SCM mine and is the current planned location for our high-pressure acid leach developments. Now, earlier on, I talked about some of the capital investments that we've made. One of those is to build a haul road, which links up the SCM mine to the IMIP industrial park on the coast, where we can basically use that haul road to deliver saprolite ore to the RKEFs, and we can pipe limonite ore to the existing HPAL operations in IMIP. That'll allow us to start production from the mine in the second half of the year, and we expect to progressively produce production over the course of the coming years. Next slide, please. Okay, so this summarises our 3 RKEF lines. In all 3 of these RKEF lines, we own 50.1%, being Merdeka battery material. And the product is produced as nickel pig iron, which usually is sold to stainless steel producers. And these stainless steel producers use the nickel pig iron to produce stainless steel. Our production has been very consistent since CSI and BSI first went into production in 2019 and 2020. And the existing new smelter, ZHN, has started commissioning late in Q2, and we expect to ramp up to full production by the end of Q3 2023. Next slide, please. Okay, so just one of the key initiatives during the last quarter was to purchase an interest in this high-grade high-grade converter. So it takes the nickel pig iron and it produces, as a first step, low-grade nickel matte, and then that low-grade nickel matte is fed to a high-grade nickel matte converter, and based on that conversion, we take the nickel pig iron, we get about 96% recovery between NPI through to high-grade nickel matte, and we're expecting to produce somewhere between 50 to 60,000 tonnes per annum of high-grade nickel matte, depending on the input grade of the material that we feed to the converter. Now, one of the key advantages of this process is it will help us to increase our margins. We believe by over $1,000 per tonne of nickel matte, and that will see us generating quite a bit more EBITDA over the course of the coming years from this acquisition. Next slide, please. Okay, the next slide is really a summary of our plans in relation to high-pressure acid leach plants that we are planning to develop in the future. We announced an initial term sheet that had been signed with cattle, and this term sheet is to produce a total of 120,000 tonnes per annum of MHP containing nickel and cobalt, and the first phase will be for 60,000 tonnes of production. The intention is that our joint venture partner Cattle will take responsibility for the detailed construction and engineering, and will provide the initial funding for the development of the HPAL. And once the HPAL is operating on a steady state, then Merdeka will have the option to increase its ownership from 49.3% up to 66% overall ownership in this planned HPAL development. At this stage, we expect the production to commence during the course of 2026, and that should see a very significant addition to the overall MBM business. And it is, I believe, the future of the nickel industry in Indonesia, we'll see a lot more high pressure acid leach plants developed. And these plants supply material into the battery supply chain. Next slide, please.